Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar presentation, Taking Your Multi-Site Management at Scale to the Next Level, brought to you by Acquia. Before we get started, I have a few housekeeping items that I need to go over. First, if you have any questions for our presenters today, please post those into the questions panel so we can get to them after the presentation. If you experience any technical difficulties today, please post a message in the chat panel, and I will work with you to resolve those issues. Last on my housekeeping list, today's presentation is being recorded, and it will be available shortly after the webinar ends. Now that we are through with the housekeeping items, I would like to introduce you to today's presenters. Our presenters today include Kara Hall. Kara is a Senior Product Marketing Manager with a focus on Acquia Site Factory and Acquia personalization. She has a passion for innovative marketing solutions in the digital experience space and finding ways to help marketers and developers work together efficiently. We also have Jill Maraca, Director, Web Development Services at Princeton University. Jill is the director of Princeton University's Web Development Services, WDS team, and has more than 20 years of experience working in web and digital. WDS provides comprehensive website design, development, project management, information and architecture, and technical support for partners across Princeton. We also have Mandy Englert, Solutions Consultant, FFW. Mandy has joined the FFW team as a solutions consultant after previously working for Penn State as a leader in digital strategy for 6 years. She is focused on website strategy and brings her expertise in website analytics, user experience research, redesign road mapping, and content optimization to every project. And with that, I will now pass it over to our presenters to begin today's presentation.
Awesome, thank you. So as you said, my name is Kara Hall from Acquia. Thank you so much for joining us today for our Multi-Site Management at Scale webinar. Really quickly, I'm just gonna go over the agenda. So the first part we're gonna cover is establishing the rights and permissions, and then we'll dive into key factors in a successful multi-site. Then for a third, we'll follow up with optimizing your multi-site platform. And then last but not least, we'll cover getting buy-in and scaling. And then we'll take some live questions at the end. So without that, I'll pass it off to Mandy to get started.
Awesome. Thank you, Kara. And as mentioned, I work for FFW, who, if you don't know who we are a digital agency that empowers leading organizations like Princeton to effectively scale their websites and digital experience platforms. We have 650 plus people globally, and we have long-standing partnerships with both Acquia and Princeton. And what you'll be hearing a lot about today is the importance of understanding how users are interacting with your brand. So especially when you have multiple domains that users tend to interact with. A single user will likely interact with your brand in multiple ways. And depending on the size of your organization, they will likely interact from multiple websites and multiple subdomains. So sometimes these platforms are disconnected from one another, whether that be from a design perspective or brand voice or backend integrations. Well, this leads to a really inconsistent experience for users who are interested in the brand. And that leads to brand inconsistencies, which diminish the ability for users to connect with that business. So when I've worked for marketing before, I would always ask my team, how can a user build loyalty for the brand if every experience, if every marketing channel looks completely different from one another? And why I would ask this is because it's so clear that a user won't be able to understand the brand or understand what really excites them about the brand if the experience is disjointed. So, when I would work with brand strategy teams, a huge part of what they'd be focused on is really creating that consistent brand and consistent experience. So it's actually why I'm really excited to be joined by Jill from Princeton, because I do believe that this is a problem that's so common for universities who tend to have several subdomains. So for instance, Princeton is just one single brand with hundreds and really thousands of individual sites within the university. So wrapping your hands around providing a consistent experience for a user and keeping that single branding and keeping consistent workflows can be a really huge challenge in that environment. And I myself actually came from higher education in a previous position as well. And I don't always get to say this about higher education, but that level of scale that we see from our partners like Princeton really lends itself to several best practices for multi-site management in general. And I do believe that there's so much to be learned from this sector when it comes to multi-site management. And getting this right is really not very easy. It takes forming the right partnerships with technology partners. It's understanding those marketer and content owner goals and improving that disjointed experience, collecting the right data for marketers, and being able to really quickly act on critical moments in time. So how do we create that consistency and how do we get that buy-in? What you're going to hear a lot about today are building those requirements, focus on speed, optimization, flexibility. Because if we create these partnerships between content owners and developers, and we utilize technology products to really enhance the platform and the technology roadmap, you're going to find a lot of opportunities to prune technical debt and focus on optimizations that matter for the business. And while these areas that we're showing here are pretty broad, like speed, optimization, and flexibility, you're going to notice that these align to providing a better user experience and a better authoring experience. So this is going to give your marketing and your content teams the ability to build experiences across multiple platforms. It gives the business the ability to personalize that experience. And ultimately, this is all aimed at building that brand loyalty. So when you're trying to get that message out about your brand, it's going to be so important that you have that good, consistent experience. So first, we're going to discuss establishing the right partnerships and really focusing on establishing that partnership with content owners. It's really important to define who that content owner is. You want to understand their goals and be able to push that vision, whether it's just making sure that there's like a header and footer that's consistent across every website, logos are consistent, or sometimes that content owner, that marketer really has a position about the brand voice or a templating approach that you really want to build into the platform as well. And partnering with the team that really owns the brand can help lead to content governance and help determine exactly what your platform and content owners are going to need. You really can't scale without that partnership. And it usually starts with a marketer or a content owner saying that they need a new website. And when digging into the requirements, some of the typical things that you're going to hear are that they need it ASAP, they need it on brand, multiple authoring roles, they need it to connect with social media or be able to publish quickly and effectively, sometimes even connect to mobile apps. And while marketers and content owners are really good at putting the content and branding all together, they're typically not really as good at optimizing processes or resources. So this is really where I always believe that a really great partnership can flourish. This is where technology can really come into play, and a well-built platform can help get the content out to the right users at the right time. So if we're breaking this down, what we hear from content owners to actual requirements that can be built into a platform, things like, you know, a unified consistent message or quick and flexible editorial workflows can be really important to that content owner. And when a platform is able to meet these goals, you're going to run into a lot less ad hoc content chaos because you have that defined brand, you have that defined consistency built right into the platform. And over time, as you scale, you're going to begin to see content owners' ability to make decisions and investments towards their content. And some of the next big questions you're going to start to hear from marketers will be turned towards being able to provide data on a single user that's using several websites within your multi-site. They're going to want to be able to define segments to offer personalized experiences. And that's where things get really exciting, especially from the marketing perspective. So for me, that's really what I see as part of building that successful multi-site is getting to that point where marketers are able to ask those questions and marketers are able to take that next step. And so we're actually going to dig into some of those key factors for a successful multi-site. And I'm going to pass to Jill here to actually speak a little bit more about how Princeton is solving for this, among the many other benefits that her and her team are actually getting from multi-site. So Jill, just when you're starting to look at Princeton, the Princeton brand and creating that consistency across the university, why was multi-site the way to go for you?
Thanks, Mandy. Yeah, I mean, multi-site was the way to go for us because it it addressed most of those things you said in the slide. It says, I need a new website. It's got to be ASAP. They need the site up and running. It's got to be on brand. It's got to be mobile friendly. It can connect to live content. And so multi-site was the way for us to do it, where we could create sites very quickly within an hour or two and provide them to someone and they can fill it in. So with multi-site, it's basically one code base. And in that code base, there's editable and what I'll call like untouchable branding elements. So it's what I describe as we aimed for this sweet spot of enough flexibility with the layout and theme, with the rigidness of this brand consistency. So some of those untouchable elements are the Princeton logo. We don't want people stretching it, distorting it, putting it on the wrong background color, but yet we give them that flexibility to pick some different orientations or sizes or placements of the logo. So they have this sort of illusion of choice, but they're using the brand in a consistent way. Similarly, with multi-site, we're able to give people the option of font choices. So they can't pick any old font they want, but they can pick from a selection of font pairings that we've chosen that are still on brand. Similarly with colors, they can pick some Princeton appropriate colors, and date formats. So you're not browsing one Princeton site with one date format to another date format to another date format. There's some consistency around formatting of that sort of content. And a little bit about colors too. So the sites that we create, we want them to be accessible for those with disabilities, and we aim to meet a certain standard. And so by giving people a selection of colors to stay within, we can ensure our sites remain accessible. Also with data integration, so multi-site lets us have consistent data integration. So being at a university, many sites want to pull in courses data about classes and courses and their titles and descriptions and instructors. And we want that data coming from the authoritative source at the university. We don't want people just entering in any old course and misspelling things or adding their own descriptions. We want it to come from a source. And so when we spin up a new website, that integration is already built in. We're not rebuilding it every time we build a site. So it's already there for people to use. And then consistent content sharing. We know people, they want to share things like news and events between websites, and we don't want those people having to do duplicative content entry. We want them to just be able to enter it in on one website and be able to share it among, let's say, a family or collection of related sites, so they can enter it once and publish it everywhere.
That's great. And so how is this approach supporting your team in development? And also, how is it really supporting the university as a whole?
Yeah, so we're doing our multi-site through Site Factory. And the way that this supports us is that we're able to have one code base that we've written over time, and we can just reuse it on 1,000 websites. So we're not constantly making websites from scratch. They all use the same code. And for example, even if we made a new feature or integration or something, we make that for the whole code base, and then we can push it out to all the sites so they can also take advantage of it. So it's nice to have these reusable features and components. Site Factory allows us to deploy it to all of those sites. It also supports the university in that we're able to have a lean development team supporting many, many, many websites. So maybe there's about approximately 4 or 5 core developers who work on the platform. And then, it allows us to also have manageable deployments. So small teams supporting 1,000 sites, we can do it, and we can have manageable deployments. It also Site Factory is allowing us to consolidate multiple Drupal 7 code bases into one Drupal 9 code base. So currently we have these 3 ecosystems of Drupal 7 code bases, and we know we have to upgrade to Drupal 9, Drupal 10, etc. And having this Site Factory tool helps us to consolidate them all into one code base. So it's multi-site plus Site Factory. We can get everything consistently into a Drupal 9 code base, and we're partnering with FFW to get that done now. I mentioned we can develop new features and roll them out to all websites. But a key thing is that at Princeton, if you're in this multi-site platform, you can have multiple websites and have a consistent editing experience. So we know that people here at Princeton, they might have 1, 2, some have 4 or 5 websites they're supporting. And so those content editors and marketers, when they go to update or add content to those various websites, they have the same editing experience. You know, they're not going to one website and going, oh, I forgot how I enter this here, and how do I enter this content here, and what are the buttons I have to click on this site? So we get this consistent editing experience with Site Factory.
That's great. And then, so our next section really kind of gets into optimizing that multi-site platform, continuing to scale, adding those layers of data and personalization to it. And the first part of that is really putting together your platform roadmap. So within FFW, the way that we talk about a multi-site platform roadmap, we summarize this as own, operate, and optimize. So with own, we believe that every company should be in control of their roadmap. So using a cloud-based solution like Site Factory makes this really possible. Operate, which really talks about, you know, what platform features and functionality can help you operate at scale. So there's going to be current needs of your users and then your future needs. And the last piece is optimize. So multi-site platforms are living, breathing products. And I feel like we all have to remember that sometimes. So building that strong roadmap really ensures that you're constantly optimizing as you're learning a lot more about your users over time. So Jill, now that you're in a multi-site, what is your process? How are you outlining milestones and creating a roadmap for what you want to achieve?
Yeah, so our process is a monthly product meeting. You know, we think of our Drupal multi-site as a product, and we're continually improving it. We've even given it a product name. We call it the Princeton Site Builder. And this way, our editors and marketers, they don't need to worry, am I on Drupal 7, 8, 9? They just need to know they're all on the same platform. And during our monthly planning meetings for our product, we go through and talk about, well, what are the things that we hear the most that people want? And you know, what are the new features we hear about? What are the bugs people are complaining about the most? And then we prioritize them and we work on them and we roll them out on a monthly basis. So it's a continually improving product. We continually assess it. You know, maybe the way we did something 2-3 years ago isn't how we want to do it now. So we continually examine the product and make sure that it's operating the way our marketers and editors want it to be operated. We email those website owners and we tell them, you know, here's a list of release notes, here's what's new in the platform. And we also hear from our project managers. These are the people who work with other departments to actually build websites in the platform. Their input on what they're hearing from our users is key too. So in short, we basically look at it every month. It's not that we built this and we're just letting it run. So every month, continual improvement.
That's great. And another piece of that is really personalizing those audience experiences. And as a marketer, this is where things get really interesting. When you're running a multi-site, it's likely that you're targeting a lot of different audiences and using a lot of different devices. They're all coming from different channels. So it's important to be able to connect all of that marketing data together and work to personalize each audience's user journey through your websites and other marketing channels. So you can adjust those user preferences, helping them find what they're looking for to provide them a good experience, with ultimately the end goal being building that loyalty for the brand. And this is something FFW's really worked through with Fannie Mae, is just one example where we use Acquia's marketing platform to personalize some experiences for those who needed it most during natural disasters. So we went through some of the site pages. We started with just like kind of a pilot where we were focus on having more engaging content on certain pieces of the website. And what we noticed was that we were seeing higher engagement from users on the website, and that they were becoming less likely to leave the website right away. And with that, we were able to double, the goal completions, reaching out to the disaster help center. So that's a huge change and such a big experience for something that was really just a pilot. So in some of those top areas and the ways that we focus, and the things that we typically rely on when we're starting an optimization product, are finding those audience segments that are really worth your time and effort. So rather than personalizing to a specific user with their name, or focusing in on a really specific or a discrete audience, you want to find those segments that are going to be worth your investment for content teams to target, for design to build graphics for, and ultimately for developers to create that unique experience. We want to offer users relevant information that improves their journey. This happens by really digging into where your audience is clicking and discovering what they're expecting from that experience. So then adding that throughout the site to help them get to their goals quickly. And lastly, always A/B test, and always do it with an end goal in mind. So if there's no test if you're not looking at a specific metric on the site. And that was something, I've had a lot of trouble with, just coming from, the internal sectors, but it's something that I push really hard, making sure that you have that end goal and that specific metric in mind. So our last section that we're going to get into today is scaling your platform, and getting that buy-in so that you can continue with this. And Kara, I know that we've talked a lot about partnerships and getting set up and optimizing. How do you talk to clients about scaling, optimizing, and getting buy-in to be able to scale and optimize their platforms?
Yeah, so when it comes to scaling and buying, perfect. When it comes to scaling and optimizing your digital platform, we at Acquia approach it by seeing how we can add value to organizations beyond their original platform solutions. Through the use of our Acquia Marketing Cloud solutions, we add additional value on top of those original platform solutions. And to show that value and to deliver that value, we look to gain buy-in from the C-level executives and from marketers and digital teams alike, with features that not only support the organization's goals, but the teams that will deliver on those goals as well. So the first product we can see here is Acquia Personalization. When it comes to getting the buy-in from the C-level, we like to show how Acquia Personalization can reduce IT maintenance time with no coding required once it is initially set up. For their marketing teams, we like to gain that, again, that same buy-in from those C-levels by showing that we can enable their marketers to be more productive through a variety of tools. And then last, we like to improve content performance and their experience that they provide through A/B testing that then keeps those users more engaged with that content. And then last but not least, personalization that is built for Drupal, with which results in richer data collection. So those are all of the benefits that C-level executives gain from personalization. And then when it comes to enabling those marketing teams or those digital teams with Acquia Personalization, we like to gain their buy-in by showing them how we can enable them to personalize any site through low code with drag and drop functionality to allow anyone to build, preview, and launch new sites that have personalized experiences on them, as well as enabling them to work efficiently by creating content once and then having it automatically be personalized across a variety of different experiences, as well as being able to A/B test to keep those audiences engaged. The Acquia Personalization allows marketers to be able to do that all from within it. And then last but not least, it's deploy and align personalized campaigns and programs to optimize the efficiency of the marketing teams and the digital teams as they work together to, enhance and optimize those digital platforms. And then the second product we can see here is our Acquia Dam. How we look to gain our C-level buy-in is that content influences customers, how they find, choose, buy, use, and share products. Because of that, the product content needs to be tailored to sales channels and regions. Acquia Dam makes it easy for users in different regions to be able to customize content content based on how it is all. But more importantly, the kind of the nuts and bolts of it is how it helps the marketers. So we look to gain buy-in from the marketing team with DAM is in how it organizes content into and increase the use of the content within the system, how it coordinates distribution to support greater customer experiences, how it's uploaded by the appropriate teams. And then last but not least, streamlining and automating content related workflows to improve operational efficiency to then again just and help the team be able to do their jobs easier and faster.
Awesome, thank you. And Jill, I know you've had to speak to a lot of the C-levels too about just getting that buy-in internally, and what were some of the ways that you were able to do that?
Yeah, it's always nice when you're talking about cost savings. That's usually a great way to start getting buy-in. So being able to say that, hey, I can provide websites that have a consistent brand and consistent infrastructure, and it can save money. That's always a win. So I can say, we can have a tool that lets us roll out many websites, and lets us do that quickly. It gives us the ability to host many websites at a cost saving. So if you think about it, if we have 1,000 websites and if we were to have some sort of hosting contract for each one of them, it can get quite expensive. So doing many websites on a single code base, single multi-site code base is a great cost savings. Maintaining this code base is also a cost savings. We can apply the latest security patch to many sites all at once. So there's another example. And the cost saving is really, it rolls into this efficiency. So I mentioned, again, this process for rolling them out, for updating them quickly, it's very efficient. Small team can support many sites. And there's an efficiency in marketers and editors being able to learn one single platform. So if you're a new employee at Princeton, and you have to learn how to edit websites as part of your job, you're able to learn one platform, and that creates an efficiency as you come into your new job. Consolidating support is also something that plays into cost savings. So we're able to support all of these sites because they have a consistent set of features and set of things that people need to do, and the set of things that can go wrong. So it's not like we're trying to troubleshoot 100 different things. We know if something is wrong on one site, it's probably wrong on 999 other sites. And so we can quickly figure it out, support it, and fix it, and roll it out to sites. When we get support tickets, again, we know, okay, well, they're having trouble with this one thing, and we can figure it out and do it in an efficient way. So sure, I think a lot of getting buy-in with the C-suite goes back to cost savings. How can we support so many sites with a small team and do it quickly?
Awesome, thank you. So that's our presentation for today. Does anyone have any questions?
All right, thank you. We do have some questions from the audience. Let's start with this one. It's a little bit long, so we'll try to take it as it comes. So one of our attendees would like to know, besides code, what do you typically leverage? Besides code, do you typically leverage some content blueprint for a site that generates the initial common site structure and page content? Or do you mostly just reuse the same code and theme elements, but each site is primarily unique in content, where only some items are shared across the sites?
I could take that one. Yeah, so great question. We have what we call starter kits. So if you request a website in our platform and you indicate the type of site it is it an academic site? Is it an administrative site? Is it a lab site? Or is it a site to showcase your work as a faculty member? We do provide them with some starter sample content so that we're not giving them a site that's just a completely blank screen. They can have this guide, and then they can change it, modify it, delete it as needed. But we did try to provide them with the most common things we think that they're going to need to get the site started. So we call them starter kits.
Great. And in those starter kits, is there anything, this is a follow-up question, that helps you manage translations, SEO concerns, anything like that?
Translations, meaning multiple languages. We don't have anything like that, although we do make sure that our editor supports multiple languages. So if they're read right to left or left to right, we also make sure our editor supports accessibility for multiple languages. So that's built into the what you see is what you get editor. And what was the second part of that?
Anything for SEO?
Yeah, so of course we do headings help, of course, with SEO, so having proper headings and encouraging people to put in headings at the right level. We also give them some control over whether or not it can be picked up by search engines or not. There are some times where someone wants a piece of content they don't want it picked up by a search engine. And we do give, we have a feature that gives them the ability to create a sitemap, which helps search engines crawl and rank your site. So the sitemap feature, we think, helps with that.
Great. We have a question here about going from Drupal 7 to Drupal 9. So this question says, from the old Drupal 7 sites moving into the common Drupal 9 design, approximately how many different designs were there in the Drupal 7 world, and how many happy or cranky, and how happy or cranky are stakeholders about the transition from 7 to 9?
Well, there's too many to count. I'll put it that way. There's too many designs from Drupal 7 that I could even begin to count. We also in Drupal 7 gave people the ability to use CSS injector, which was that got quite creative with some people. They really took what we had hoped they would start with, our base theme, and they got quite creative with that, overriding all sorts of styles. So too many to count. And so far, no one cranky about the new designs. So I'd be the person they'd probably complain to first. And so far, so good. You know, we did try to hit that sweet spot. You know, if you don't like a light color site, you have a dark theme. If you don't like the font, well, here's two other options. You don't like the layout? Well, here, go use Layout Builder, and you can make this page look all sorts of different ways. But you're still sticking within the constraints that we gave you. So so far so good, no complaints.
Great, no crankiness, that's great. And then there was a clarifying question from one of our listeners. At one point you said one code base reused by nearly 1,000 websites, and this person wants to know if that, by reused, do you mean shared? The code base is shared?
Yes, shared, yes, because what we don't want is us starting to stray from the shared code base. So it is shared in a sense that it underlies all the sites, but then on top of it, we have a method of configurations that are saved per site that gives each one its own uniqueness.
Great. We have another question coming in that's concerned about security. The question says, how do you handle Drupal security updates with a single code base?
Well, we get the emails every Wednesday. If you're not getting those emails every Wednesday on what the security updates are, sign up and get them. We go through those and check and see, do they apply to our site? Are we using that module? Do we need to do this or that? And then we make the determination that if so, we then determine how urgent it is to roll it out. And then we'll probably roll it in with our monthly code release, and it gets distributed to all the sites, and the Site Factory product makes it possible for us to go one by one in a pretty short time and update each site with that security patch.
Great. We have some more questions coming in here. This one, again, is a little long. I'll try to convey it as accurately as I can. So this question says, in a multi-site ecosystem, how do you approach, from a technical strategy point of view, one-off customizations? Specifically, how do you avoid collisions in GitFlow in between the platform and the one-off customizations? Or is this when you would encourage a custom build?
Yeah, so I will answer that lightly, but I'd probably direct you to a developer on that one on GitFlow. So we do have the ability for people, not people, my own team of developers to do, let's say, a custom content type or custom module on one site. We try to avoid that as much as possible, but there is certain configuration files where you could have some unique change in just that one site. And we allow that to happen because what we didn't want is that if we're building a site for somebody and like 95% of the needs can be met with the base platform, we didn't want to spin off a whole new custom site just for that. We wanted the ability to be able to put in that one feature just for that site. And so we were able to do that. I direct that to my developer on how it's done because I'll probably explain it badly right now. But it is possible. And we wanted to do that, but not roll it out to every single site. You know, there are things that people ask for their particular site, and anytime the request comes in, we talk as a team and say, hey, you know, that's a great thing that they need. Should we build it for everyone in the entire platform or not? And that's always part of the conversations with each monthly planning meeting. If we feel like it's something that more than 1, 2, 3, or 5 people are going to use, we then talk about, well, how do we roll it out to all the sites? And when I say roll it out, we will roll it out quietly, like it's not enabled for everyone, but we'll make the announcement like, hey, we built this new such and such feature. If you want to take advantage of it, go here, enable it, and then you can use it on your own site.
Okay, so this one is listed as a follow-up question. I'm not entirely sure what it's a follow-up to, but I will try my best to convey it here. It says, follow-up question, will the new design be used elsewhere by other services, like perhaps the identity and access management team theming the single sign-on page?
For the Princeton design, we wish. Yeah, that would be great. So complementary to the Drupal multi-site is a design system that Princeton has. We anticipate things like that are custom coded or vendor products to use that design system, which it dovetails into the Princeton website design.
All right, great. We have a few more questions here, and I encourage our attendees to keep them coming if you have more. We do have a little bit of time. Here's a question. When looking at personalization, do you have any tips for identifying that first experiment or initiative to tackle? Maybe Mandy, is that something maybe you want to talk about?
Yeah, sure. So I always look for the low-hanging fruit first. I know that's probably like a really broad answer, but it's, you know, I always like to start there because it helps you start to build that testing culture internally, which can sometimes be really difficult and probably a huge another topic for a different day. But I like to really start with what is the data really telling me around my goals. So I'll look at my conversion rates, usually by like devices, by channels, things like that, and try to understand if there's a metric that looks way different than it does on my other channels, on my other devices. So for instance, if I was looking at mobile device traffic and my conversion rate was completely different than what it is on desktop and tablet, I know that there's probably a gap within that experience, and that's something that I want to try to solve for with experimentation. So, you know, I usually like to start with just like looking at that conversion, looking at conversion rates across the board. But basically, you kind of want to figure out the experience of those converting users overall. You know, what are they doing on the websites? And then follow that experience and then try to understand how you could get more people to do that one task in the broadest terms possible. That's usually where I start, is looking at that conversion path and starting optimization there.
Great. Here's a follow-up question to that, Mandy. I think this will be a good one for you as well. Do you have any tips on how to prioritize features on a platform roadmap?
Yeah, so that's actually a really good question. I really like to look at return on investment. So I like to look at, the ROI for all of those different features and how it really affects the business as a whole. So that really includes like how much effort needs to be put into this feature to get it to go live from an internal perspective. Is it going to take, a couple hours, a week, a couple months? And how is that going to affect the business? Is that going to help our conversion rate go up overall? Is it going to help that brand loyalty? So I like to try to look at, taking a very measured approach to how we prioritize any of our feature roadmaps versus what are the things that may be needed or wanted by stakeholders of an individual site, or, sort of a one-off request that won't really go to an overall goal. So it's sometimes a really hard discussion to have internally, but I always found that when I was taking a really measured approach to it, people seemed, that they could see the meaning behind it and they could understand like what we were trying to aim for, what was going to give us the highest return on what we were trying to do.
Great, makes sense to me. Here's another question coming in now. This will be interesting. How long does it take to migrate Drupal 7 sites to Drupal 9 with the multi-site tool?
I could take that. So it depends. So we're partnering with FFW to do it. This allows me to keep like my regular work going on with my developer, designer, project management team. So if I say we've got about 1,000 upgrades to do, we've got 3 different Drupal 7 ecosystems that we had created. We're taking each ecosystem one by one and doing it in phases. So the two ecosystems have a similar code base that they share. The third ecosystem is what we call snowflakes. They're like 35, all different builds and all different ways of doing layout and blocks and so forth. So the 35 snowflakes are the last phase. Including planning time and funding and so forth, it'll probably take us like 3 years with the planning time, 2 years with actual rolling up our sleeves, getting in there, coding and moving things. It does depend, the time does depend on how much communication you want to do with the site owners. So one of our phases, we did a lot more communication than the other phases, meaning we upgraded their sites and we told them, you have a content freeze and here's your upgraded site and go look at your site and here's a spreadsheet and you can report issues and questions to us. So it was a high touch upgrade phase. The second phase is going to be quicker and low touch, meaning your site's getting upgraded now. Here it is, it's done, go look at it. Here's some help files and support and training, but we're moving on. We'll say it in a friendlier way than that, but it's a much quicker way. So it really just depends on how much communication and hand-holding you want to do with each site owner.
And I can jump in here as well. At Acquia, we do have a flight path report that will help you understand what about your D7 sites needs to be migrated, so then it can help you understand what parts of your sites will need work done to them or the code will need to be changed to help give you a more precise idea of what exactly your D7 to D9 migration can look like, since it looks so different for everybody. So we can connect you with that if that is something you're interested in.
Great. And here's a couple questions, Kara, that might be suited to you coming from our attendees. Do Marketing Cloud solutions integrate with Drupal Cloud solutions?
Yeah, absolutely. So our Marketing Cloud solutions do integrate with our Drupal Cloud solutions. A lot of them have direct integrations with each other so that they can work kind of seamlessly with each other. And there are new developments with the products and how they integrate with each other that will be rolling out here very shortly. One of those is, this has been announced and you can go and read up on it, but you will be able to personalize directly from within Site Studio. So that will be coming shortly. So you'll directly be able to do those personalizations with that Marketing Cloud tool. So Acquia personalization, you'll be directly able to do that within your Drupal Cloud tool of Acquia Site Studio. So you don't have to go back and forth between the two different products. You can just do them as you can personalize as you're building out new web pages.
And speaking of Acquia personalization, how many different segments can you set?
Yeah, so you can set as many segments as you need or want. You can set as many rules to then build out those segments within each individual segment. So an unlimited number of segments can be defined by, I don't want to say it's an unlimited amount of rules. There are limits, but it's pretty wide. We haven't heard of anybody reaching their rule limitation on setting the rules for an individual segment. So pretty much undefined segments or unlimited segments, not undefined.
Functionally unlimited. That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. I think we have another question for Jill about your implementation. This one asks, are you implementing any process or feature that will help you with identifying Drupal 9 sites that should be retired? And this person notes that, hey, they all seem new now, but they will all become old eventually.
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. We are, yes. So one thing that was eye-opening to me when we started the Drupal 7 to 9 upgrade was the amount of sites that were unnecessary was far more than what I anticipated. So when I talked about we had these 3 different Drupal ecosystems. In one of those ecosystems, it's almost like 50% of the sites we determined did not need to upgrade. And I wished we had a process to determine that from the get-go, but it ended up being a manual look at each and every one of these sites and determine, is there enough content or is the content stale and can we archive it in some static way? So going forward, yeah, so what we're doing is we are modifying, we have a custom application we wrote called the sites database, and it tracks all the URLs and the owners of the sites. And we're building in a way to, email each one of those owners on some periodic, timely basis, probably annual to start, like, hey, in our records, we have noted that you own the site. Do you still need the site? Just simply asking, do you still need the site? And then B, trying to work in some automation to determine the last login or last content update date that would trigger someone on my team to go and look at the site and make the determination, like, hey, can we email this group and ask them, hey, do you still need the site or can we archive it in some way? So the answer is yes, and I wish we did it sooner.
And apparently this is common in institutions of higher educations and maybe specifically in the Ivy League, because that question came from Kenton at Harvard. And he says hi and notes that they are going through the same pain.
I feel you, Kenton. Yes.
All right. Well, it looks like those are all the questions that we have. That was a great engagement from the audience. Some great questions there. If everybody has any last minute questions before we wrap up, I'm sure our panelists would love to take them. But yeah, it does look like that's the final question for today. So Mandy, any final words before we wrap?
Yeah, actually, so FFW is offering a free 1-hour consultation with some of our digital scale experts to help you get started on your technical roadmap. So feel free to scan the barcode there or just visit the link to learn more about that offer, and feel free to reach out. We're available, so let us know.
Great, and I believe that is all that we have for today. So with that, D-Zone would like to thank Jill, Kara, and Mandy for a great presentation. D-Zone would also like to thank Acquia for providing our audience with an outstanding webinar. Lastly, thank you to everyone who attended today. We hope you learned something new that will help you in your developer career.